Hello, chart watchers and DecisionPoint faithful. Welcome to this Friday, June 21st, 2019 DecisionPoint show with your hosts, Carl and Erin Swenlin. For those of you joining us for the first time today, welcome to the show. And for our regulars, welcome back. All right. So how are you doing up the hill there, Dad? I imagine you have clouds just like I do.
Yes, we do.
Yes, I have a purple lawn right now, though. I have to say that jacaranda is all over it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's beautiful, but messy. Well, the markets aren't too messy. We had a really interesting day. I was just looking at it. We opened higher, made some all-time highs, but promptly fell back, and all of the markets, all the major indexes closed lower today. I'm not sure what to make of that, but we'll look at
It's
the
option expiration day.
option expiration day. There you
Yeah.
are. All right, we're going to look at the broad market indexes, the price relative chart that we always review. Well, of course, the big point of the show is the weekly review of the indicators and the big four, of course, the scoreboard indexes. And bonus, we are showing you a bunch of charts, things that make you go, So I think you'll have some interesting charts to look at the end of the show. So stick around for that, but let's go ahead and get started. All right, the DecisionPoint scoreboards, we had some signal changes go on this week. The intermediate term trend model clicked two buy signals, one on the Dow Industrials and the other on the Nasdaq 100. That signal was triggered when the 20-day EMA crossed above the 50-day EMA. Today, we got a weekly PMO buy signal. So these are weekly signals, and they don't go final until the final trading day of the week at the end of the day. And the Dow went final. So we'll take a look at that chart as well. We had that buy signal, though. It was in there waiting in the wings pretty much all week long. So I'm not surprised to see that one pop in there. Looking at the DecisionPoint sector scoreboard, everybody is on a buy signal. Not a surprise. We've had quite a rally as of late. Energy is the laggard at this point, still sitting on an intermediate term trend model sell and a long-term trend model sell. This means the 50-day EMA is below the 200-day EMA. So that's why we have a sell there. 20 is below the 50. And both of those were below the 200 when that crossover occurred. So that's why we have a sell signal there. All right, well, let's go ahead and dive into some charts. All right. And you can see that all right. So let's go ahead. All right, so what I was looking at on the chart here, this is our relative chart. So this is showing you price performance relative to the S&P 500. So that's what we're looking for, is what's going on with that performance. Are we seeing some outperformance, or are we seeing underperformance? Well, as you can see, the large caps and Nasdaq 100 and S&P 100 are certainly performing better than the S&P. So even though we are seeing quite that rise on the S&P 500, we're seeing overall that these two large cap indexes are performing slightly better. Looking at the Dow, really, it looks about the same. I have a rising bottoms trend line, but really it's been pretty much on par with the S&P 500 since mid-May. The one that concerns me that I'd surely like to see get better, that would be the S&P 400 and 600, which have been pretty consistently underperforming and are now setting new relative lows. So just any time now, I would expect them to start performing better. And a lot of times when the dollar is rising, that's when you'll see these do a little bit better. However, of course, we know that the dollar is sliding right now, so I don't know that there's going to be any extra help out there. Okay, broad market indexes, so just a look at the price charts. The one thing I really wanted to point out here is, of course, the S&P 500 today reached a new all-time high. But you can see that not everybody else was participating here. Obviously, the S&P 400 is very far away from its all-time highs. the 600 is even further away from its all-time highs. They have a lot of catching up to do. The Dow Jones Industrials, while they did come up higher, don't believe they set a new intraday high. Maybe the Diamond, DIA, did set a new all-time high, intraday high, it looks like. The QQQ, Nasdaq 100, not quite there either. And we'll look at the charts in just a moment of those so you can see the differences between the ETF versions and the actual indexes. Right now, though, let's look at the global situation here. And we're finally seeing a few of these countries coming out of declining trends that started off those highs. Now, we managed to get out of our bear market, and we have been continually setting new highs, higher highs, but we're not seeing that coming out of the global ETFs as of yet. The best I could say is that, like I said, we have these declining trends. We're starting to see a little bit of a breakout on some of these countries. If you want to see this and look at this chart more closely, it is in the DecisionPoint live chart list, as are all the ones that I'm showing you. So you can go there and study them a little more closely if you'd like. So yes, here is the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the actual index. And as you can see, we did not set any new all-time highs. Usually you don't want to see those big moves to the upside. And certainly with the S&P 500 setting a new all-time high and then falling all the way back down to close near the lows for the day. Typically that's going to set up a shooting star candle, and that's not what you want to see. That typically means you're going to see a back down or a pullback of some sort, maybe a just small decline. Dow Jones weekly chart, there we are. PMO buy signal, that's the one that just came in that I changed on the scoreboards. And here is the Nasdaq's daily chart. There is the intermediate term trend model signal that came in earlier in the week. PMO is still on a buy signal. We're now sitting in positive territory. OBV looks pretty good. We have a flag that is executed. I'm seeing this on a lot of these large cap indexes. I mean, the expectation to me would be for prices to move higher. I'm not getting enough negativity coming out of any of the indicators. Here we have the Nasdaq's weekly chart, and we got a bottom above the signal line. And I look at usually the tops below a signal line as especially bearish, and I look at bottoms above the signal line as especially bullish. So avoiding a sell signal, I always like to see that. Nothing new here for the OEX. Also reached but did not get to those all-time highs. We were just short. And there's another PMO bottom above the signal line. S&P 500, the exciting chart for the day. Here we go. There's that all-time high that we set today, but as you can see, we also came back down to close in negative territory, down slightly. You have the PMO buy signal is still intact. I still really like the way the OBV is reacting. You have declining tops, though, on our OBV, and the tops are technically rising slightly, and that would be considered a negative divergence.
There's the volume, total volume for S&P has not updated yet, it looks like.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It should be a lot higher than that. All of the Dow, the NDX, OEX, they were all higher than normal because it's end of quarter option expiration day, and we get a very high volume on those days. You don't want to mistake that as being a special message that something else is going wrong, either up or down.
No, that's exactly right. All right, and there's the weekly chart. Here you can see that all-time high that we set this week. It was a good week. We were up 2.2% on the week for the S&P 500. Again, another PMO bottom above the signal line. So I like the way these indicators are reacting right now. And let's look at them a little more closely. So the ultra short-term indicators, looks like we did get it to update, so that makes it interesting. But yesterday, we certainly did have climactic readings to the upside, and we had that puncture of the upper Bollinger Band on the inverse scale that I use. And that would suggest a buying exhaustion. So my expectation is usually to see a decline, in a couple of days after that, or just it's really, really short term. I think we did really extend ourselves yesterday. So it's not a surprise to see a little bit of a back down here. On options expiration days, we also don't tend to get too much movement. But right now, these readings that just came in, I wouldn't be looking at them as especially climactic. The VIX is starting to pull back here and it's going to get a little bit higher. So we'll have to watch and see where that ends up going. But I have to say the short-term indicators and the intermediate-term indicators still look really good. We got, we reached overbought territory, pulled back, and now we're making our way back up. And there's still plenty of room for them to move higher. They're not especially overbought. I wouldn't call them overbought at all just yet. So they're saying we have room for more upside. The intermediate term indicators are now breaking their declining tops trend lines here. So I would have to say that's positive for the intermediate term to expect all-time highs to finally be bet as far as closing on them. All right, I'm going to let you take over the screen and you can show.
Why don't you go back to the S&P 500 chart a minute, as I wanted to.
Oh, sure.
Mention something there. Okay, we did get our volume, and you notice that there's a volume spike in March. There's one back in December. Another one is in September. And notice that actually today's volume is noticeably lower than the other three. The one in December is extra high because it's option expiration day. Plus, you had a great deal of selling. Selling climax going on there. So that high volume there had two meanings, which is kind of unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And also the OBV has topped, and it is below the top in April.
Yes.
So there's a negative divergence there. Not good.
Yep, and we didn't have, since we got the negative volume in here, that's what gave us that top. It wasn't on this chart.
Right.
Very teachable moment here. So when we have the negative volume, of course, you subtract down day, you subtract all of that volume from your OBV line. And so that's what caused that top. And yes, we are getting that negative divergence now, for sure. All right, take it away. Oh, I did want to mention too, we did get an intermediate term trend model buy signal on the S&P 400. Been waiting on that one for a while. It did finally come through.
Okay. I'm having a little trouble with my doctor. This is a new trick for Carl, sharing his screen. Okay, the dollar finally broke down out of that 10-month rising wedge pattern. You notice that we had a high in May, and then the high in June was lower, and then would break down. Having broken down from the pattern, it's met expectations. We don't know. I don't have any estimates of how much further it's going to go down. But right now, the way it's performing, I would be looking for a continued decline. Okay. Okay, the weekly chart, notice that we have long-term resistance drawn across the 2017 top. And this goes all the way back to 2007. So it's a rather significant line. The PMO, the weekly PMO, is not particularly um, bad at this point, although, in the thumbnail, it really exaggerates it. But it's certainly headed in the wrong direction this time. For me, it's, I've been looking for that, the dollar to get weak so we could get some upside motion on gold, which we did.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
This was really an impressive move for a change. And notice we haven't gotten today's premium discount update. But I'm assuming it still will be in the red. But if this price action continues like it's doing, that'll be soon turning green, which would be good because that means people are starting to get on board. The weekly chart, very long-term resistance. It goes back to 2014, and it's got a nice breakout above that. I'm sorry, that's the one. Yeah, okay. Getting a little disoriented here. It's a good breakout. I expect it to hold.
We had a quick question for you on Market Watchers. We were debating whether gold would outperform the S&P into December. Do you have any opinion?
I don't understand the question. Will it go up more than
the relative strength line? Will it rise faster?
Yeah, I get it. But it's just not something I ever think about.
Okay, fair
enough. Gold does what gold does, and stocks do what they'll do. I don't really ever compare them because I don't think it's a choice of one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
I need you clicking the charts for me.
You're almost there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oil. It had a lovely week. We've got an island reversal, and I honestly believe it's kind of running out. When you consider all the activity going over, in the oil country, that it should have done more than that. But there's really not a lot of fundamental. I think it was somebody said that going through the Gulf of Hormuz there is, I think about, I don't hold me to this, but about 16% of the world's supply goes through there. That's significant, but it's not a huge amount. Mm-hmm. And the way the U.S. has been producing, we could probably fill that up pretty quickly. So people are looking for oil to go. I heard somebody say $80. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, it seems a little high.
Let me just get boy. Let's photos. We don't want to look at those.
Yeah, your arrows.
There we go.
Okay.
Lose my place. Okay.
Yeah, I just need to scroll up a bit. Yeah, there you are.
Okay. I like to show the West Texas Intermediate crude chart along with USO. Notice the weekly PMO for USO is turned up, which is positive. And but both USA and WTIC are in the middle of a trading range. The top of the range is 76, and I don't expect that go beyond there unless we see some really exciting movement right there. We didn't see any this week to speak of, as far as I'm concerned, because this routinely moves, 3-4% a day, one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Bonds, I think they've hit their top. Notice we almost got a PMO crossover sell signal there. And let's just move on to the weekly chart so we can see that we've got a resistance line drawn across the 2016 top. Now, it could stair us up higher, but basically there has been no interest rate decrease. And I think it's gone as far as it's going to go on the hopes of a decrease next month. You notice that it closed at the low end of today's range. Here's what I'm going to start including in the weekly wrap. Right, at least for as long as we have the inversion. Just to be clear, the top two lines are the 30 and the 20 a year bonds. They're the only ones that are higher. The yield is higher than the 1 month and the 3 month T-bill. The rest from 1 year to 10 year are all yielding lower than T-bills right now. Take a look at this hasn't updated yet, but it's good enough. We have the Golden Cross percent for the S&P 500, some percent of stocks that have 50 EMA above the 200 EMA. And it's still pretty strong. The percent of IT trend model buy signals is lower panel, and it's at 60% now. So that's pretty good, but it's really kind of a divergence on price making new highs now. And we need to see that kick in more. Okay, I mentioned last week the Case-Shiller National Home Price Index. Let me get this squared away a little bit. Here it is from year 2000. It's you'll notice that last week I talked about 2006 being a top, and that was before the housing market crashed. And you notice since it finally bottomed, and it's actually higher now than it was back in 2006. The expectation is, in my opinion, is that it's pretty much run its course. I went ahead and put that index on a chart with that interest rate array, and noticing the top in 2007 for interest rates, how the housing index was starting down then. That's one data point. What happened there, it doesn't prove anything, but there is some similarity with what we've got going over the right. We've had a top in interest rates, and they're heading down right now.
Hmm.
You had your Bitcoin discussion and versus gold last week, and I wrote down some comments my own. I think the problem with Bitcoin for me is when something's going wrong, who do you call? Who owns Bitcoin? You know,
Mm-hmm.
if there's a problem with your bank account, you know who to call. With this, I heard of a company CEO who died and took the password to the Bitcoin account with him. And they were scrambling trying to figure out what to do about that. So it's just something I can't get my head around. You know, you have a house, you have a bank account, other assets. The value of those assets vary each day, but you don't really have any sense of it. But with Bitcoin, for one thing, the variation of the price on Bitcoin just makes no sense. I mean, it's a great little trading, you know, it's great for trading, I guess, because it does follow the rules. You notice on this chart, we've got the great big parabolic over here, which was destined to crash and did. And now we're starting again. It looks like it went back down to a level of support, which seems reasonable here. And now it's starting up again. It's like double or tripled by now.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, we had a parabolic there, and it corrected down about 20%, and it's starting into another one. You know, this was quite extreme, but it could easily happen again the way this is moving. The thing that my thought is, right now, Bitcoin is anonymous. The governments are not going to let that stand. It'll soon become illegal to own it anonymously. You know what I'm saying? So I think that is down the road. I don't know how that would happen or how they would handle it, but there's not any way it's going to be legal to have your own money the government doesn't know about. Simple as that.
Yeah. It seems hard to imagine that could happen.
Well, I think I've run the course on these charts. Did you have any comments?
Well, I was going to ask, you know, we did talk about, you know, before the show, I was looking at some of the Swinland trading oscillators on the S&P 400 and S&P 600. In fact, I suppose I could pull that up. But we have like only 30 seconds here. But the main point that I would make is that we were seeing that you know, they're not performing. We're getting declining tops on them, and we've not at all seen that with
those were on the low cap indexes.
Yes,
The mid and small cap, and that's what's happening. I mean, there's not as much money going into those indexes right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, we do have you can get to these from our DecisionPoint chart pack. So just something to note, but notice the declining tops. That's what I was talking about. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us today. Please complete that survey if you could on your way out. It's to the right. And as a quick reminder, DecisionPoint airs Fridays at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Have a great weekend and happy trading.